taking me just a moment to start with this video. First thing I'm going to do is just issue a warning. This is going to be a somewhat heavy topic for those of you who've ever been harassed or felt bullied or experienced anxiety because of someone who's been in your life who has treated you in a way that left you feeling unsafe. Then this may or may not be the video for you. Now that that's sort of out of the way, maybe. In this video, I'm going to talk about an experience that actually happened to me a number of years ago. Let me think. It is now 2021, and this incident happened in late 2017, early part of 2018. And so I was really surprised when recently, here in 2021, I was having a conversation in a girls group, and a friend of mine talked about being harassed. While I was surprised that she hadn't told me, I wasn't really shocked because, hey, I had not told her that I had been in the same place. And I thought I had put that behind me. Like, I thought that I had totally moved on. I thought I was okay and good to go. And then I realized I was not. So let me start with the girls group event that went on. So yes, I was with some friends recently, and one of those friends indicated that she was experiencing some harassment. And it was okay. I was actually sitting beside her when she was talking about it, and I sort of reached over and sort of patted her on the back as she was talking about it. And I wasn't even feeling any kind of way at the time. I was just sort of like, yeah, I've been there, girl, yeah. And she was talking about how long it took her to realize that she was going to have to do something about it. Like, for the longest time, she just let this person continue to harass her and harass her and harass her. Some of the other women at the table, I think they didn't really understand, and I think I can get that from other people who may have not been in this situation before. And they'll say, well, why didn't you do something the first time? Or why did you wait so long? Or yeah, and they're with you, but they're sort of like, well, why did you wait? And you should have done something a long time ago. It's gonna be okay. And they're still supportive, but a lot of times they don't understand like the space that you're in when it's happening. And so as she was sort of talking about it, like, I totally got what she was saying about why it took her so long to do something about it. I'm gonna get a little closer to you because this is sort of an intimate sort of thing. All right, she was sharing her experience with us. Fine. She was giving us some of the details. Fine. She was talking about what was going on, how she felt. All of that was fine. I was fine until she actually played a message that he had left for her. Now, just to let you know, sometimes when you're being harassed by someone, they may not necessarily be thinking coherently, which means they're probably not speaking coherently, which means what you get sounds even worse. Because if it were just a sentence that, had a noun, a verb, and then some follow-up words after it, you could understand that, and yes, you would still be upset. But when the language that is recorded and left for you to listen to has words mixed in with a whole lot of emotion, with the B word thrown in, like you're just like sprinkling it on top of a cake or something, just like throwing it in again and again and again, and it's incoherent, like it doesn't even make sense. It's not even like real sentences. It's just like a blah, 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 blah. I can't even do it. That's even harder to take, because then you feel like the person is not thinking clearly. And if the person is not thinking clearly, there is a possibility that the person may not act in a way that one would think a clear thinking person would act. In other words, that person may be more likely to do something to you, to him or herself, or to others. And it puts you in a much higher state of anxiety. And at that point, you're just sort of like, okay, I don't know what to do now. So once my friend shared the story, but then shared the actual voicemail, I realized that it brought back up a lot of what I had gone through. Like all of those things came back up. I had been in a situation where, yeah, a person had even told me that if I showed up at a certain place to like wait and see what would happen to me. And, you know, comments like that like really throw you because you don't know what that means. You don't know what they're gonna do to you. You just are left with this feeling of anxiety and fear. And it's really, you know, it's really harmful just to your general well-being. And when I talk about like health and fitness on this channel, you know, a lot of times, and I've said this before, a lot of times it may sound like I'm really focusing on the physical aspect of it, but I focus on the physical aspect of it to help strengthen the mental aspect of it. So it's like if I can get my body feeling good, I can work more on my mental space and where my head is. If my body is not feeling good and I'm physically not feeling good, I feel like it's even harder for me to work on the psychological side of things. That's just my take. You can go with it or not. But this whole sort of girls trip, girls event, girls experience, whatever it was, just sort of brought all that back around for me. Like I totally thought that was gone. And I realized, so this is what people are talking about when they talk about needing a trigger warning. Because I could have used one. I could have used 2 or 3. Like I could have used a head up. I could have used a heads up. But she didn't know that. Like she didn't know that I had had that experience, that our experience had almost been pretty much the same, because the person who had harassed me in my life held sort of the same position and relationship to her in her life, which made it even worse, because I was like, girl, we were really in the same situation. Like we could have changed places and been like the same thing. The person who harassed us was this person who held a certain space in our life. They had certain responsibilities. They communicated with us in a certain way. Like it was the same. She and I were almost replaceable, you know? So recently, all of that has sort of come back around, and I thought it was gone until that event. So I recently brought it up in another group conversation and realized that maybe there were just some underlying things there that I never really dealt with. It was sort of like the person stopped harassing me and went away, but I never really like had a moment to really work through that trauma. So at least that's what I've been told. I'm not a psychologist, but I've told that maybe I haven't really worked on the trauma that I went through. So for those of you who've been there, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if it sort of ends, you think you're good to go, when in fact, maybe you aren't. We're just going to call this segment right here me taking a moment to sort of process what I'm talking about, because I still have a lot of emotion about it. That just speaks to the fact that I really haven't dealt with it. I want to throw in where gender fits in with this. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm just going to talk about it from my perspective, and maybe to some extent what I was seeing with my friend, because she is a woman also. And this doesn't mean that men can't go through this, because they can. But in terms of just the idea of being a woman and being in a predicament where you don't feel safe, where you wonder, if you can leave your house and if you'll be okay, and if you go to certain spaces, are things going to happen in a way that put you in danger? Like, there's no way for you to really know that. And so from a health perspective, from a psychological perspective, your anxiety is high. Like, you're on high alert. So it's this sort of high level of anxiety that you're feeling like every day, over and over and over again. And then there's this sort of piece to it where you just don't know what to do. Now, my friend, because of the space that she is in and who she is, she was able to rely on some help from some people in the community who could look out for her and provide security for her. I was not in that place, so it was just sort of me reaching out to a few friends who tried to talk some common sense into this person. And let me sort of say this too, because it's something that I noticed in both of our cases too, that the people who were doing the harm to us, they were in a position where they had experienced some possible harm themselves. In her situation, her person who was causing her harm had already caused harm to a lot of other people. Like, there were a ton of issues going on over there. In my case, the person who was actually causing me harm had experienced his own harm. And as a result, there was medication there that he needed to have been taking, but he wasn't always taking it like he should have. And I get there's side effects and that sort of thing, and not everybody does. Look, we don't always do what we're supposed to do, right? But when that impacts someone else, then it's a bit of a different story. So I'm now sort of assessing, where do I go from here, after realizing that I haven't really dealt with this. And so how am I going to deal with this? And what is that going to look like? And I really don't know. I've been told, Sheila, you haven't really worked through this, and that you probably need to sit down and have some therapy on this so that you can, move forward, because you really haven't. And I know that that's probably something that I need to do. But like most people, I have a million things going on in my life. And every day it feels like a new struggle, one that I could never have imagined. Things just continue to pop up daily. And dealing with those things and dealing with past things and just like dealing with life on a daily basis, it all just becomes a big struggle. But I recognize that help should be on the way for those of us who have been in this circumstance. And if you have and would like to share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear it. Maybe you have some advice that you can provide to me, because apparently I'm in need of that and a whole lot more. But that is pretty much it. It is probably not one of my usual videos, and probably just because this has been on my mind for a while and I haven't quite figured out how to handle it and how to go forward with it, other than the fact that I've been told, Sheila, you need to be in therapy. Well, most of us probably need to be in therapy for something. But yeah, so I will let you know how it goes. If I find a therapist, if I talk to a therapist, and maybe we'll go forward and we'll talk about how Sheila moves on from her harassment like years later, because it's been a while. But yeah, so that's it. Like I said, I know this is not one of my usual videos. This is a little different, but because I think that, you know, these things matter in terms of just your general well-being, that it's important that we start to have more conversations about them. And yes, this is very upsetting, even for me to talk about now. But we'll see how things go. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you made it this far. And we'll talk again soon when we figure out where Sheila's going with the therapy. Peace.